Stop right there, because the next few minutes may completely change how you see this war. For days, people have been told two things at the same time. First, that Iran has been heavily weakened. Second, that Israel still fully controls the skies. But if that were the whole story, then why are missile sirens still shaping daily life? Why are ceasefire talks so fragile? Why are air defenses still under such intense pressure? And why does every new barrage still have the power to shake not just Israel, but Washington, oil markets, and the entire region? Because this war is no longer only about who can strike. It is about who can keep absorbing the pressure. And that is a much more dangerous question. The conflict that erupted at the end of February, after coordinated U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran, has entered a phase where public messaging and battlefield reality are no longer lining up cleanly. American officials say Iran took devastating losses. AP reported that U.S. military leaders described extensive damage to Iranian military infrastructure. But the same reporting also says Iran still retains some strike capacity, and Israel itself has continued to face missile and drone attacks even after weeks of war. That is the contradiction at the center of everything. If Iran has been badly hit, then why does this still feel so unstable? If Israel is still intercepting the vast majority of incoming threats, then why does each new strike still matter so much? And if a ceasefire exists, then why does the region still look like it is only one bad decision away from another round of major escalation? Because the real story here is not simple battlefield victory. It is strategic endurance. And that is where things start to get uncomfortable. Now here is what we do know. Reuters published images and reporting showing that Iranian missile barrages have, at times, pierced Israel's multi-layered missile defense system. That does not mean Israeli defenses have collapsed. They have not. But it does mean the shield is not perfect, the pressure is real, and the psychological effect of even limited penetrations is enormous. AP also reported that Israel says it has intercepted more than 90% of incoming missile and drone threats, which sounds reassuring until you remember that a small percentage of a very large number can still cause deadly and politically significant damage. That is the first key point. The second is even more important. This is not only a missile war. It is a cost imposition war. Iran does not necessarily need to dominate Israeli airspace to create strategic effects. It does not need to destroy entire air bases on camera to send a message. It only needs to prove that it can keep Israeli defenses under strain, force commanders to make hard choices, and remind everyone that even a militarily superior state still has to defend population centers, military facilities, and critical infrastructure at the same time. That is how pressure becomes a weapon. And that is why the air war may be changing, even if it has not decisively flipped. Most people hear the phrase air superiority and imagine total control, one side flying freely, the other side powerless to respond. But that is not what this war looks like right now. AP's recent reporting says about 80% of Iran's air defense systems were attacked, and that many military targets were hit, but it also notes that some Iranian strike capabilities remain. Reuters and AP both show a conflict in which missiles are still flying, air defenses are still firing, and diplomacy is still struggling to keep up with military reality. That means the battlefield is not settled. It means Israel may still have the upper hand in many areas, but it does not have the luxury of acting like the threat is gone. And it means that every incoming barrage still matters because it tests three things at once: readiness, inventory, and public confidence. Think about what that looks like in practice. A missile is launched. Radars track it. Threat classification begins. Commanders have seconds to determine trajectory, target risk, and interceptor choice. Then the system fires. And if the engagement works, the public sees a flash in the sky and exhales. But what the public does not see is the deeper arithmetic underneath it all. How many interceptors were used? How fast can they be replaced? How many layers are available if the next wave is larger? How long can this tempo continue before the burden itself starts becoming a strategic liability? That is the real stress point in modern air defense, and it is one reason why repeated Iranian barrages matter even when many of them are intercepted. Reuters, March 27. Visual report showed that some Iranian strikes got through and caused destruction despite Israel's sophisticated defensive network. That matters because the power of a barrage is not only measured by the number of direct hits, it is also measured by how much fear, disruption, and defensive expenditure it creates. A defender can be tactically successful and still be strategically pressured. Now add Tel Nof and other major military facilities to this picture. I do not have reliable confirmation for the viral claim that Tel Nof was devastated or that dozens of Israeli jets were destroyed. But major air bases always matter in a conflict like this, whether they are hit directly, threatened indirectly, or forced into heightened readiness. The reason is simple. They are not just runways. They are symbols of operational reach, command rhythm, maintenance cycles, sortie generation, and national confidence. Even the credible threat against such sites can shape how a military disperses assets, manages risk, and communicates strength. That is a strategic effect, even without a sensational headline being true. And that brings us to the question many people are now asking. Has the IDF lost the air war? Based on the reliable reporting I checked, no. There is no solid evidence for that claim. Israeli air defenses are still functioning. Israel continues to strike. AP explicitly reported Israel's own assessment that interception rates remain above 90%. At the same time, Iran has not been neutralized. So the more accurate picture is not Israel has lost the air war. It is that Israel is facing a stubborn, still dangerous adversary that continues to impose cost and uncertainty even after taking serious losses. And that distinction matters, because exaggerated claims can mislead viewers into expecting a collapse that has not happened. But the verified reality is serious enough on its own. A war does not need a dramatic overnight reversal to become dangerous. Sometimes it becomes more dangerous when neither side fully breaks. That appears to be where we are now. AP reported that Iran has launched thousands of drones and missiles since the war's start, while also noting that a temporary ceasefire did not end the underlying conflict. Reuters and AP both describe talks that remain vulnerable to failure. And today, AP reported that U.S.-Iran talks ended without an agreement, leaving uncertainty hanging over an already fragile truce. That means the military threat never truly left the room. And when diplomacy fails or stalls, air defense pressure matters even more, because then every side starts recalculating. Iran may conclude that time still gives it leverage. Israel may conclude that deterrence requires another show of force. Washington may conclude that more pressure is needed to prevent Tehran from exploiting the pause. And all of those calculations can collide at once. That is how wars expand. Not always through one spectacular event, but through repeated pressure, repeated misreading, and repeated assumptions that the other side is closer to exhaustion than it really is. That may be the single biggest danger in this phase: underestimating endurance. American officials have emphasized the scale of damage inflicted on Iran, and that damage appears real. But AP's own reporting also acknowledges the possibility that Iran can rebuild or source capability again, while recent events show it still retains enough to remain dangerous. That is why claims of decisive closure should be treated very carefully. A force can be weakened and still be deadly. A state can be damaged and still hold escalation options. And once you understand that, the wider map starts to look different. This is not just about missiles in the sky over Israel. It is also about the Strait of Hormuz, about regional allies, about Hezbollah fire, about U.S. military posture, and about the fear that one front can trigger another. Reuters has reported on the ongoing crisis around Hormuz, while AP described talks in Pakistan taking place under the shadow of continued regional instability. In other words, the air war is connected to everything else. That is why each barrage still carries such weight. It is not only testing interceptors, it is testing the entire political architecture holding this crisis together. Can Israel defend without overextending? Can Iran keep threatening without triggering a response it cannot absorb? Can the United States deter wider escalation without being pulled even deeper into the war? Those are the real questions now, and none of them have clear answers. So where does this leave us? Here is the clearest way to put it. The viral title about 300 hypersonic missiles, 80 destroyed jets, and a lost Israeli air war does not stand up to the reliable reporting I found. But the truth underneath the hype is still deeply serious. Iran continues to launch dangerous attacks. Israeli defenses continue to face real pressure. Some strikes have pierced the shield, and the ceasefire framework remains unstable enough that the next phase of the conflict could arrive very quickly. And that means the story is not over, not even close. Because what decides this phase of the war may not be a single dramatic strike or one viral headline. It may be something colder, something slower, something much harder to see in real time. Which side can keep going longer? Which side can keep reloading? Which side can absorb more pressure without making the mistake that turns a fragile conflict into a wider one? That is the real air war now. Not just planes, not just missiles, not just interceptions, but endurance. And if that is true, then the next barrage will matter for more than the damage it causes. It will matter because it tells us whether the system is holding or whether the pressure is finally starting to change the balance.